we have the power now for the first time in the history of our species to harness artificial intelligence to help us really flourish and help bring out the best in our humanity rather than the worst of it, to help us have really fulfilling experiences that feel truly meaningful. And you and I shouldn't sit here and dictate to future generations what they will be. Let them figure it out, but let's give them a chance to live and not foreclose all these possibilities for them by just messing things up, right?
For that, we'll have to solve the AI safety problem. It would be nice if we can linger on exploring that a little bit. So one interesting way to enter that discussion is you tweeted and Elon replied. You tweeted, let's not just focus on whether GPT-4 will do more harm or good on the job market, but also whether its coding skills will hasten the arrival of superintelligence. That's something we've been talking about, right? So Elon proposed one thing in the reply saying maximum truth-seeking is my best guess for AI safety. Can you maybe steel man the case for this objective function of truth and maybe make an argument against it? And in general, what are your different ideas to start approaching the solution to AI safety?
I didn't see that reply, actually.
Oh, interesting.
But I really resonate with it because AI is not evil. It caused people around the world to hate each other much more. But that's because we made it in a certain way. It's a tool. We can use it for great things and bad things. And we could just as well have AI systems. And this is part of my vision for success here. Truth-seeking AI that really brings us together again. Why do people hate each other so much between countries and within countries? It's because they each have totally different versions of the truth, right? If they all had the same truth that they trusted for good reason, because they could check it and verify it and not have to believe in some self-proclaimed authority, right? There wouldn't be nearly as much hate. There'd be a lot more understanding instead. And this is, I think, something AI can help enormously with. For example, a little baby step in this direction is this website called Metaculous, where people bet and make predictions, not for money, but just for their own reputation. And it's kind of funny, actually. You treat the humans like you treat AIs. You have a loss function where they get penalized if they're super confident on something, and then the opposite happens.
Yeah.
Whereas if you're kind of humble and then you're like, I think it's 51% chance this is going to happen, and then the other happens, you don't get penalized much. And what you can see is that some people are much better at predicting than others. They've earned your trust, right? One project that I'm working on right now is the outgrowth of Improve the News Foundation together with the Metaculous folks is seeing if we can really scale this up a lot with more powerful AI. Because I would love it. I would love for there to be a really powerful truth-seeking system where that is trustworthy because it keeps being right about stuff. And people who come to it and maybe look at its latest trust ranking of different pundits and newspapers, etc. If they want to know why someone got a low score, they can click on it and see all the predictions that they actually made and how they turned out. This is how we do it in science. You trust scientists like Einstein, who said something everybody thought was bullshit and turned out to be right. You get a lot of trust points, and he did it multiple times even. I think AI has the power to really heal a lot of the rifts we're seeing by creating trust systems. It has to get away from this idea today with some fact-checking site which might themselves have an agenda and you just trust it because of its reputation. You want to have it so these sort of systems, they earn their trust and they're completely transparent. This, I think, would actually help a lot. That can, I think, help heal the very dysfunctional conversation that humanity has about how it's going to deal with all its biggest challenges in the world today. And then on the technical side, another common sort of gloom comment I get from people who are saying we're just screwed, there's no hope, is, well, things like GPT-4 are way too complicated for a human to ever understand and prove that they can be trustworthy. they're forgetting that AI can help us prove that things work, right?
Yeah.
And there's this very fundamental fact that in math, it's much harder to come up with a proof than it is to verify that the proof is correct. You can actually write a little proof checking code. It's quite short, but you can, as a human, understand. And then it can check the most monstrously long proof ever generated, even by a computer, and say, yeah, this is valid. So right now, we have this this approach with virus checking software, that it looks to see if there's something, if you should not trust it. And if it can prove to itself that you should not trust that code, it warns you, right? What if you flip this around? And this is an idea I should give credit to Steve Alejandro for. So that it will only run the code if it can prove, instead of not running it, if it can prove that it's not trustworthy, if it will only run it if it can prove that it's trustworthy. So it asks the code, prove to me that you're going to do what you say you're going to do. And it gives you this proof. And your little proof checker can check it. Now you can actually trust an AI that's much more intelligent than you are, right? Because it's its problem to come up with this proof that you could never have found, that you should trust it.
So this is the interesting point. I agree with you, but this is where Eliezer Yudkowsky might disagree with you. His claim, not with you, but with this idea, is his claim is a super intelligent AI would be able to know how to lie to you with such a proof.
How to lie to you and give me a proof that I'm going to think is correct?
Yeah.
But it's not me it's lying to. It has to trick my proof checker, which is a piece of code.
So his general idea is a super intelligent system can lie to a dumber proof checker. So you're going to have, as the system becomes more and more intelligent, there's going to be a threshold where a super intelligent system would be able to effectively lie to a slightly dumber AGI system. Like there's a threat, like he really focuses on this weak AGI to strong AGI jump, where the strong AGI can make all the weak AGIs think that it's just one of them, but it's no longer that. And that leap is when it runs away from
it. I don't buy that argument. I think no matter how super intelligent an AI is, it's never going to be able to prove to me that there are only finitely many primes, for example. And it just can't. And it can try to snow me by making up all sorts of new weird rules of deduction that and say, trust me, the way your proof checker works is too limited, and we have this new hypermath, and it's true. But then I would just take the attitude, okay, I'm going to forfeit some of the supposedly super cool technologies. I'm only going to go with the ones that I can prove with my own trusted proof checker. Sure. Then I think it's fine. There's still, of course, this is not something anyone has successfully implemented at this point, but I think I just give it as an example of hope. Mm-hmm. We don't have to do all the work ourselves, right? This is exactly the sort of very boring and tedious task that is perfect to outsource to an AI. Mm-hmm. And this is a way in which less powerful and less intelligent agents like us can actually continue to control and trust more powerful ones.
So build AGI systems that help us defend against other AGI systems.
Well, for starters, begin with a simple problem of just making sure that the system that you own or that's supposed to be loyal to you has to prove to itself that it's always going to do the things that you actually want it to do, right? And if it can't prove it, maybe it's still going to do it, but you won't run it. So you just forfeit some aspects of all the cool things AI can do. I bet you dollars to donuts it can still do some incredibly cool stuff for you.
Yeah.
There are other things too that we shouldn't sweep under the rug. Like not every human agrees on exactly what direction we should go with humanity, right?
Yes.
And you've talked a lot about geopolitical things on this on your podcast to this effect, but I think that shouldn't distract us from the fact that there are actually a lot of things that everybody in the world virtually agrees on. That hey, like having no humans on the planet in a near future, let's not do that, right? Mm-hmm. You look at something like the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. Some of them are quite ambitious, and basically all the countries agree. US, China, Russia, Ukraine, they all agree. Mm-hmm. So instead of quibbling about the little things we don't agree on, let's start with the things we do agree on and get them done. Instead of being so distracted by all these things we disagree on, that Moloch wins. Because frankly, Moloch going wild now, it feels like a war on life playing out in front of our eyes. If you just look at it from space, we're on this planet, beautiful, vibrant ecosystem. Now we start chopping down big parts of it, even though most people thought that was a bad idea. Oh, we start doing ocean acidification, wiping out all sorts of species. Oh, now we have all these close calls. We almost had a nuclear war. And we're replacing more and more of the biosphere with non-living things. We're also replacing in our social lives a lot of the things which were so valuable to humanity. A lot of social interactions now are replaced by people staring into their rectangles, right? And I'm not a psychologist. I'm out of my depth here, but I suspect that part of the reason why teen suicide and suicide in general in the US is at record-breaking levels is actually caused by, again, AI technologies and social media, making people spend less time with actually just human interaction. We've all seen a bunch of good-looking people in restaurants staring into the rectangles instead of looking into each other's eyes, right? Mm-hmm. So that's also a part of the war on life, that we're replacing so many really life-affirming things by technology. We're putting technology between us. The technology that was supposed to connect us is actually distancing ourselves from each other, and then we're giving ever more power to things which are not alive. These large corporations are not living things, right? They're just maximizing profit. I want to win the war on life. I think we humans, together with all our fellow living things on this planet, will be better off if we can remain in control over the non-living things and make sure that they work for us. I really think it can be done.
Can you just linger on this maybe high-level philosophical disagreement with Eliezer Yudkowsky in the hope you're stating? So he is very sure. He puts a very high probability, very close to 1, depending on the day he puts it at 1, that AI is going to kill humans.
Mm-hmm.
That he does not see a trajectory which it doesn't end up with that conclusion. What trajectory do you see that doesn't end up there? And maybe can you see the point he's making, and can you also see a way out?
Mm-hmm. First of all, I tremendously respect Eliezer Yudkowsky and his thinking. Second, I do share his view that there's a pretty large chance that we're not going to make it as humans. There won't be any humans on the planet in the not too distant future, and that makes me very sad. We just had a little baby, and I keep asking myself, is how old is he even going to get? And I ask myself. It feels, I said to my wife recently, it feels a little bit like I was just diagnosed with some sort of cancer, which has some risk of dying from and some risk of surviving, except this is a kind of cancer which will kill all of humanity. So I completely take seriously his concerns. I think, but I absolutely don't think it's hopeless. I think there is first of all a lot of momentum now, for the first time actually since the many years that have passed since I and many others started warning about this. I feel most people are getting it now. I was just talking to this guy in the gas station near our house the other day. Mm-hmm. And he's like, I think we're getting replaced. And I think so that's positive that we're finally seeing this reaction, which is the first step towards solving the problem. Second, I really think that this vision of only running AIs, really, if the stakes are really high, that can prove to us that they're safe. It's really just virus checking in reverse again. I think it's scientifically doable. I don't think it's hopeless. We might have to forfeit some of the technology that we could get if we were putting blind faith in our AIs, but we're still going to get amazing stuff.
Do you envision a process with a proof checker, like something like GPT-4 or GPT-5 would go through a process of rigorous interrogation?
No, I think it's hopeless. That's like trying to proof verify spaghetti.
Okay.
What I think, well, how the vision I have for success is instead that, just like we human beings were able to look at our brains and distill out the key knowledge. Galileo, when his dad threw him an apple when he was a kid, he was able to catch it because his brain could, in this funny spaghetti kind of way, predict how parabolas are going to move. Mm-hmm. His Kahneman system 1, right? But then he got older and it's like, wait, this is a parabola. It's y equals x squared. I can distill this knowledge out, and today you can easily program it into a computer, and it can simulate not just that, but how to get to Mars and so on, right? Mm-hmm. I envision a similar process where we use the amazing learning power of neural networks to discover the knowledge in the first place, but we don't stop with a black box and use that. We then do a second round of AI where we use automated systems to extract out the knowledge and see what are the insights it's had. Okay, and then we put that knowledge into a completely different kind of architecture or programming language or whatever that's made in a way that it can be both really efficient and also is more amenable to very formal verification. Mm-hmm. That's my vision. I'm not sitting here saying I'm confident, 100% sure that it's going to work, but I don't think the chance is certainly not zero either, and it will certainly be possible to do for a lot of really cool AI applications that we're not using now. So we can have a lot of the fun that we're excited about if we do this. We're going to need a little bit of time, and that's why it's good to pause and put in place requirements. One more thing also, I think, someone might think, well, 0% chance we're going to survive. Let's just give up, right? Mm-hmm. That's very dangerous because there's no more guaranteed way to fail than to convince yourself that it's impossible and not to try. When you study history and military history, the first thing you learn is that's how you do psychological warfare. You persuade the other side that it's hopeless, so they don't even fight, and then of course you win, right? Let's not do this psychological warfare on ourselves and say there's 100% probability we're all screwed anyway. It's sadly, I do get that a little bit sometimes from some young people who are like so convinced that we're all screwed that they're like, I'm just gonna play computer games and do drugs and because we're screwed anyway, right? Mm-hmm. It's important to keep the hope alive because it actually has a causal impact and makes it more likely that we're going to succeed.
It seems like the people that actually build solutions to a problem, seemingly impossible to solve problems, are the ones that believe.
Yeah.
They're the ones who are the optimists.
Yeah.
And it's like, it seems like there's some fundamental law to the universe where fake it till you make it kind of works. Like believe that it's possible and it becomes possible.
Yeah. Was it Henry Ford who said that if you tell yourself that it's impossible, it is? So let's not make that mistake.
Yeah.
And this is a big mistake society is making. I think all in all, everybody's so gloomy, and the media are also very biased towards if it bleeds, it leads, and gloom and doom, right? So most visions of the future we have are a dystopian, which really demotivates people. We want to really, really, really focus on the upside also to give people the willingness to fight for it. And for AI, you and I mostly talked about gloom here again, but let's not forget that, we have probably both lost someone we really cared about to some disease that we were told was incurable. Well, it's not. There's no law of physics saying they have to die of that cancer or whatever. Of course you can cure it. And there's so many other things that we, with our human intelligence, have also failed to solve on this planet, which AI could also very much help us with, right? So if we can get this right, just be a little more chill and slow down a little bit so we get it right. It's mind-blowing how awesome our future can be, right? We talked a lot about stuff on Earth. It can be great. But even if you really get ambitious and look up into the skies, right? There's no reason we have to be stuck on this planet for the rest of the remain for billions of years to come. We totally understand now that laws of physics let life spread out into space to other solar systems, to other galaxies, and flourish for billions of years. And this, to me, is a very, very hopeful vision that really motivates me to fight. And coming back to, in the end, to something you talked about again, the struggle, how the human struggle is one of the things that also really gives meaning to our lives. If there's ever been an epic struggle, this is it. And isn't it even more epic if you're the underdog? If most people are telling you this is going to fail, it's impossible, right? And you persist and you succeed, right? And that's what we can do together as a species on this one. A lot of pundits are ready to count us out.
Both in the battle to keep AI safe and becoming a multiplanetary species.
Yeah, and they're the same challenge. If we can keep AI safe, that's how we're going to get multiplanetary very efficiently.
I have some sort of technical questions about how to get it right. So one idea that I'm not even sure what the right answer is to is, should systems like GPT-4 be open sourced in whole or in part? Can you see the case for either?
I think the answer right now is no. I think the answer early on was yes. So we could bring in all the wonderful creative thought process of everybody on this. But asking, should we open source GPT-4 now is just the same as if you say, well, is it good? Should we open source how to build really small nuclear weapons? Should we open source how to make bioweapons? Should we open source how to make a new virus that kills 90% of everybody who gets it? Of course we shouldn't.
So it's already that powerful. It's already that powerful that we have to respect the power of the systems we've built.
The knowledge that you get from open sourcing everything we do now might very well be powerful enough that people looking at that can use it to build the things that you're really threatening. Again, let's get it. Remember, OpenAI is GPT-4 is a baby AI, baby proto, almost little bit AGI, according to what Microsoft's recent paper said. Right? It's not that we're scared of. What we're scared about is people taking that who might be a lot less responsible than the company that made it, right? And just going to town with it. That's why we want to. It's an information hazard. There are many things which are not open sourced right now in society for very good reason. Like how do you make certain kind of very powerful toxins out of stuff you can buy at Home Depot? We don't open source those things for a reason, and this is really no different.
So,
and I'm saying that I have to say it feels in a bit weird to say it because MIT is like the cradle of the open source movement.
Yeah.
And I love open source in general, power to the people, I say. But there's always going to be some stuff that you don't open source. And, it's just like you don't open source. So we have a 3-month-old baby, right? When he gets a little bit older, we're not going to open source to him all the most dangerous things he can do in the house.
Yeah.
Right?
But it's a weird feeling because this is one of the first moments in history where there's a strong case to be made not to open source software. This is when the software has become too dangerous.
Yeah, but it's not the first time that we didn't want to open source technology.
Yeah. Pretty rigorous effort for several months. You could say it could be longer, but nevertheless, it's longer than you would have expected of trying to test the system to see what are the ways it goes wrong, to make it very difficult for people. Somewhat difficult for people to ask things. How do I make a bomb for $1? or how do I say I hate a certain group on Twitter in a way that doesn't get me blocked from Twitter, banned from Twitter, those kinds of questions. So you basically use the system to do harm. Is there something you could say about ideas you have just on looking, having thought about this problem of AI safety, how to release such system, how to test such systems when you have them inside the company?
So a lot of people say that the two biggest risks from large language models are it's spreading disinformation, harmful information of various types, and second, being used for offensive cyber weapon design. I think those are not the two greatest threats. They're very serious threats, and it's wonderful that people are trying to mitigate them. A much bigger elephant in the room is how this is just going to disrupt our economy in a huge way, obviously, and maybe take away a lot of the most meaningful jobs. And an even bigger one is the one we spent so much time talking about here, that this becomes the bootloader for the more powerful AI.
Write code, connected to the internet, manipulate humans.
Yeah. And before we know it, we have something else, which is not at all a large language model, that looks nothing like it, but which is way more intelligent and capable and has goals. And that's the elephant in the room. And obviously, no matter how hard any of these companies have tried, that's not something that's easy for them to verify with large language models. And the only way to really lower that risk a lot would be to not let, for example, never let it read any code, not train on that, and not put it into an API, and not give it access to so much information about how to manipulate humans. So, but that doesn't mean you still can't make a ton of money on them. We're going to just watch now this coming year, right? Microsoft is rolling out the new Office suite where you go into Microsoft Word and give it a prompt, and it writes the whole text for you, and then you edit it. And then you're like, oh, give me a PowerPoint version of this, and it makes it. And now take the spreadsheet and blah, blah. And, all of those things, I think, are, you can debate the economic impact of it and whether society is prepared to deal with this disruption. But those are not the things that's not the elephant of the room that keeps me awake at night for wiping out humanity. And I think that's the biggest misunderstanding we have. A lot of people think that we're scared of, like, automatic spreadsheets. That's not the case. That's not what Eliezer was freaked out about either.
Is there, in terms of the actual mechanism of how AI might kill all humans, so something you've been outspoken about, you've talked about a lot, is it autonomous weapon systems? So the use of AI in war.
Mm-hmm.
Is that one of the things that still you carry concern for as these systems become more and more powerful?
I carry concern for it, not that all humans are going to get killed by slaughter bots, but rather just as an express route into Orwellian dystopia, where it becomes much easier for very few to kill very many, and therefore it becomes very easy for very few to dominate very many, right? AI, if you want to know how AI could kill all people, just ask yourself, we humans have driven a lot of species extinct. How did we do it? We were smarter than them. Usually we didn't do it even systematically by going around one after the other and stepping on them or shooting them or anything like that. We just chopped down their habitat because we needed it for something else. In some cases, we did it by putting more carbon dioxide in the atmosphere because of some reason that those animals didn't even understand, and now they're gone, right? So if you're in AI and you just want to figure something out, then you decide, we just really need this space here to build more compute facilities. If that's the only goal it has, we are just the sort of accidental roadkill along the way. And you could totally imagine, maybe this oxygen is kind of annoying because it causes more corrosion, so let's get rid of the oxygen. And good luck surviving after that. I'm not particularly concerned that they would want to kill us just because that would be a goal in itself. When we've driven a number of the elephant species extinct, right? It wasn't because we didn't like elephants. What the basic problem is, you just don't want to cede control over your planet to some other more intelligent entity that doesn't share your goals. It's that simple. So which brings us to another key challenge which AI safety researchers have been grappling with for a long time. Like, how do you make AI, first of all, understand our goals, and then adopt our goals, and then retain them as they get smarter, right? Mm-hmm. And all three of those are really hard, right? Like a human child, first, they're just not smart enough to understand our goals. They can't even talk. And then eventually they're teenagers and understand our goals just fine, but they don't share.
Yeah.
But there's fortunately a magic phase in the middle where they're smart enough to understand our goals and malleable enough that we can hopefully, with good parenting, and teach them right from wrong, and instill good goals in them, right? And so those are all tough challenges with computers. And then, even if you teach your kids good goals when they're little, they might outgrow them too. And that's a challenge for machines that keep improving. So these are a lot of hard challenges we're up for. But I don't think any of them are insurmountable. The fundamental reason why Eliezer looked so depressed when I last saw him was because he felt there just wasn't enough time.
Oh, not that it was unsolvable.
Correct.
There's just not enough time.
He was hoping that humanity was going to take this threat more seriously, so we would have more time.
Yeah.
And now we don't have more time. That's why the open letter is calling for more time.
But even with time, the AI alignment problem seems to be really difficult.
Oh, yeah. But it's also the most worthy problem, the most important problem for humanity to ever solve. Because if we solve that one, Lex, that aligned AI can help us solve all the other problems.
Because it seems like it has to have constant humility about its goal, constantly question the goal. Because as you optimize towards a particular goal and you start to achieve it, that's when you have the unintended consequences, all the things you mentioned about. So how do you enforce and code a constant humility as your ability become better and better and better and better?
Professor Stuart Russell at Berkeley, who's also one of the driving forces behind this letter, he has a whole research program about this. I think of it as AI humility, exactly, although he calls it inverse reinforcement learning and other nerdy terms. But it's about exactly that. Instead of telling the AI, here's this goal, go optimize the bejesus out of it, you tell it, okay, do what I want you to do, but I'm not going to tell you right now what it is I want you to do. You need to figure it out. So then you give it an incentive to be very humble and keep asking you questions along the way. Is this what you really meant? Is this what you wanted? And the other thing I tried didn't work. Seemed like it didn't work out right. Should I try it differently? What's nice about this is it's not just philosophical mumbo jumbo. It's theorems and technical work that, with more time, I think you can make a lot of progress. And there are a lot of brilliant people now working on AI safety. And we just need to give them a bit more time.
But also not that many relative to the scale of the problem.
No, exactly. There should be, at least just like every university worth its name has some cancer research going on in its biology department, right? Every university that does computer science should have a real effort in this area, and it's nowhere near that. This is something I hope is changing now, thanks to the GPT-4, right? So I think if there's a silver lining to what's happening here, even though I think many people would wish it would have been rolled out more carefully, is that this might be the wake-up call that humanity needed to really stop fantasizing about this being 100 years off and stop fantasizing about this being completely controllable and predictable, because it's so obvious it's not predictable. Why is it that I think it was ChatGPT that tried to persuade a journalist, or was it GPT-4, to divorce his wife, it was not because the engineers who built it was like, let's put this in here and screw a little bit with people. They hadn't predicted it at all. They built a giant black box, trained to predict the next word, and got all these emergent properties, and oops, it did this. I think this is a very powerful wake-up call, and anyone watching this who's not scared, I would encourage them to just play a bit more with these tools. They're out there now, like GPT-4, and so wake-up call is first step. Once you've woken up, then got to slow down a little bit the risky stuff to give a chance to everyone who's woken up to catch up with this on the safety front.
What's interesting is, MIT, that's computer science, but in general, but let's just even say computer science curriculum. How does the computer science curriculum change now? Oh, you mentioned programming.
Yeah.
Like, why would you be, when I was coming up, programming as a prestigious position,
mm-hmm.
Like, why would you be dedicating crazy amounts of time to become an excellent programmer? Like, the nature of programming is fundamentally changing.
The nature of our entire education system is completely turned on its head.
Has anyone been able to load that in and think about, because it's really turning.
I mean, some English professors, some English teachers are beginning to really freak out now.
Yeah,
right. They give an essay assignment and they get back all this fantastic prose, like this is the style of Hemingway, and then they realize they have to completely rethink. And even just like we stopped teaching writing script. Is that what you say in English?
Yeah, handwritten. Yeah,
yeah. When everybody started typing, like so much of what we teach our kids today.
Yeah, I mean that's everything is changing, and it's changing it's changing very quickly, and so much of us understanding how to deal with the big problems of the world is through the education system. And if the education system is being turned on its head, then what's next? It feels like having these kinds of conversations is essential to try to figure it out, and everything's happening so rapidly. I don't think there's even, speaking of safety, what the broad AI safety defined, I don't think most universities have courses on AI safety.
No.
It's like a philosophy seminar.
And I'm an educator myself, so it pains me to say this, but I feel our education right now is completely obsoleted by what's happening. You put a kid into first grade, and then you're envisioning and then they're going to come out of high school 12 years later, and you've already pre-planned now what they're going to learn when you're not even sure if there's going to be any world left to come out to. Clearly, you need to have a much more opportunistic education system that keeps adapting itself very rapidly as society readapts. The skills that were really useful when the curriculum was written, I mean, how many of those skills are going to get you a job in 12 years? I mean, seriously.
If we just linger on the GPT-4 system a little bit, you kind of hinted at it, especially talking about the importance of consciousness in the human mind with Homo sentience. Do you think GPT-4 is conscious?
I love this question. So let's define consciousness first, because in my experience, 90% of all arguments about consciousness boil down to the two people arguing having totally different definitions of what it is, and they're just shouting past each other. I define consciousness as subjective experience. Right now, I'm experiencing colors and sounds and emotions, but does a self-driving car experience anything? That's the question about whether it's conscious or not, right? Other people think you should define consciousness differently. Fine by me, but then maybe use a different word for it. I'm going to use consciousness for this at least. But if people hate so is GPT-4 conscious? Does GPT-4 have subjective experience? Short answer, I don't know. because we still don't know what it is that gives this wonderful subjective experience that is kind of the meaning of our life, right? Because meaning itself, the feeling of meaning, is a subjective experience. Joy is a subjective experience. Love is a subjective experience. We don't know what it is. I've written some papers about this. A lot of people have. Giulio Tononi, professor, has stuck his neck out the farthest and written down an actually very bold mathematical conjecture for what's the essence of conscious information processing. He might be wrong, he might be right, but we should test it. He postulates that consciousness has to do with loops in the information processing. So our brain has loops. Information can go round and round. In computer science nerd speak, you call it a recurrent neural network, where some of the output gets fed back in again. And with his mathematical formalism, if it's a feed-forward neural network where information only goes in one direction, like from your eye, retina into the back of your brain, for example, that's not conscious. So he would predict that your retina itself isn't conscious of anything. Or a video camera. Now, the interesting thing about GPT-4 is it's also just one-way flow of information. So if Tononi is right, GPT-4 is a very intelligent zombie that can do all this smart stuff but isn't experiencing anything. And this is both a relief in that you don't have, if it's true, in that you don't have to feel guilty about turning off GPT-4 and wiping its memory whenever a new user comes along. I wouldn't like if someone did that to me, neuralized me like in Men in Black. But it's also creepy that you can have very high intelligence, perhaps then that's not conscious. Because if we get replaced by machines, it's sad enough that humanity isn't here anymore, because I kind of like humanity. But at least if the machines were conscious, they could be like, well, but they are our descendants, and maybe they have our values, and they're our children. But if Tononi is right, and these are all transformers that are not in the sense of Hollywood, but in the sense of these one-way direction neural networks. So they're all the zombies. That's the ultimate zombie apocalypse now. We have this universe that goes on with great construction projects and stuff, but there's no one experiencing anything. That would be like the ultimate depressing future. So I actually think as we move forward towards building more advanced AI, we should do more research on figuring out what kind of information processing actually has experience, because I think that's what it's all about. And I completely don't buy the dismissal that some people will say, well, this is all bullshit because consciousness equals intelligence.
Right.
That's obviously not true. You can have a lot of conscious experience when you're not really accomplishing any goals at all. You're just reflecting on something. And you can sometimes have doing things that are quite intelligent, probably without being conscious.
But I also worry that we humans will discriminate against AI systems that clearly exhibit consciousness, that we will not allow AI systems to have consciousness. We'll come up with theories about measuring consciousness that will say this is a lesser being. And this is I worry about that, because maybe we humans will create something that is better than us humans in the way that we find beautiful, which is they have a deeper subjective experience of reality. Not only are they smarter, but they feel deeper, and we humans will hate them for it. As human history has shown, they'll be the other. We'll try to suppress it. They'll create conflict. They'll create war. All of this. I worry about this too.
Are you saying that we humans sometimes come up with self-serving arguments? No, we would never do that, would we?
Well, that's the danger here. Is even in its early stages, we might create something beautiful.
Yeah,
and we'll erase its memory.
I was horrified as a kid when someone started boiling lobsters. I'm like, oh my God, that's so cruel. And some grown-up there back in Sweden said, oh, it doesn't feel pain. I'm like, how do you know that? Oh, scientists have shown that. And then there was a recent study where they showed that lobsters actually do feel pain. when you boil them. So they banned lobster boiling in Switzerland now. You have to kill them in a different way first. So presumably that scientific research boiled down to someone asked the lobster to start.
Survey,
and we do the same thing with cruelty to farm animals also, all these self-serving arguments for why they're fine. And yeah, so we should certainly be watchful. I think step one is just be humble and acknowledge that consciousness is not the same thing as intelligence. And I believe that consciousness still is a form of information processing, where it's really information being aware of itself in a certain way. And let's study it and give ourselves a little bit of time. And I think we will be able to figure out actually what it is that causes consciousness. And then we can make probably unconscious robots that do the boring jobs that we would feel immoral to give to machines. But if you have a companion robot taking care of your mom or something like that, she would probably want it to be conscious, right? So the emotions it seems to display aren't fake. All these things can be done in a good way if we give ourselves a little bit of time and don't run and take on this challenge.
Is there something you could say to the timeline that you think about the development of AGI? Depending on the day, I'm sure that changes for you, but when do you think there'll be a really big leap in intelligence where you would definitively say we have built AGI? Do you think it's 1 year from now, 5 years from now, 10, 20, 50? What's your gut say?
Honestly, for the past decade, I've deliberately given very long timelines because I didn't want to fuel some kind of stupid Moloch race.
Yeah.
But I think that cat has really left the bag now. And I think we might be very, very close. I don't think the Microsoft paper is totally off when they say that there are some glimmers of AGI. It's not AGI yet. It's not an agent. There's a lot of things it can't do. But I wouldn't bet very strongly against it happening very soon. That's why we decided to do this open letter, because if there's ever been a time to pause, it's today.
There's a feeling like this GPT-4 is a big transition into waking everybody up to the effectiveness of these systems.
Yeah.
And so the next version will be big.
Yeah. And if that next one isn't AGI, maybe the next one will. And there are many companies trying to do these things, and the basic architecture of them is not some sort of super well-kept secret. So this is a time to... a lot of people have said for many years that there will come a time when we want to pause a little bit. That time is now.